This Saturnalia, imagine a world where the truth was accessible and relatable. Where red baubles on a Nimrod phallus are forever changed. A solstice celebration where conspiracy and intrigue carry you away. Experience The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns, the perfect book for your weird way of life. Direct from Europe, this highly rated research has warmed the hearts of millions in time for the frosty season. Be inspired by timeless biblical questions such as, what the hell is Satan's problem? Ham did what to Noah? Was the pre-flood world really that bad? And if classic questions aren't your thing, and you prefer your Yuletide to be extra occult, take a trip to the unknown with the spine-chilling Hatman to the psychedelic realm of demonic jesters. You'll get 20 obscure and tantalizing chapters. No other book gives you the feeling of pure vindication towards your childhood fear of clowns. Each paragraph brings the wonder of Christ's sacrifice into your home. For this commercialized nonsense holiday, there's no greater gift for your family than a guide to effective spiritual warfare. Order now and get that edgelord of a teenage child of yours to Christ this winter. Sometimes in this little season, it takes clowns to get them there. To get your copy, do not call the number on screen, which is being used as a placeholder reminder of a bygone time, and don't send a check to any PO box because this is not the 90s anymore. Simply type in The Nephilim Look Like Clowns on Amazon to get your copy just in time to lock yourself away from the world and wait out the pagan festivities. Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Come on in, sit on down. I've got a good show for you guys today. I have had a guest on repeatedly over the past year. He is a host of a show on radio, Revolution, or Revolution.radio, I think is the website, because I had a look yesterday. And he has basically reached out to me about half a year ago, maybe 8 months ago now, saying this theory is blowing my mind, talking about the millennial reign theory. And even then, it was still in its infancy for me as well. And he came on and shared his perspective and his ideas about all of this from his perspective of having like a geopolitical worldview, kind of being on a radio show for so many years, talking about politics and war. And he was trying to like imagine the millennial reign of Christ and how that would actually impact people in a real tangible way, and how it would just kind of work out with like world leaders and the new power structure system. And it was a fascinating conversation, and a lot of people loved it. It got some mixed reviews, but the majority of people really enjoyed what he had to share. And I've had like 3 conversations with the guy now, and he has just joined me again today to talk about this again. And also I've got Connor from the Cult of Con to join us to add some fresh perspective to the conversation. Now, Connor has his own YouTube channel, which is growing. It's in its infancy. But he's a man after my own heart. His style is impeccable. He is funny, and he is on fire for this theory. And some of the things he's been creating on his channel have just been inspiring, and I really enjoy listening to him. So I've invited him on as well to talk with me and Hijacker about the Millennial Kingdom theory. And I'm going to hand over the microphone to the Hijacker now. Are you with me? Can you hear me? Fantastic. And I'm going to let you just share with the audience where they can find you, what you're all about, and just give us your opinion on what you feel about this theory currently from where you've come when you first heard it.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find me. Actually, I'm on a hiatus and I'm sort of semi-retirement, but I do have a show, a weekly show It's fairly big. I think it's one of the biggest ones on the network, Revolution.radio. The most important things. That's the sort of the part of the title.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I'm kind of taking some time off, especially after this political season. You get exhausted when you're.
Mm-hmm.
Witnessed it. I witnessed it with two of my sons. It was the geomagnetic, quote unquote, storm, geomagnetic level 5 storm that happened May 10th, of what I actually saw with the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis. What I witnessed personally, I've never read it in any books, and it happened right above my head. I don't know what it means, but it's so otherworldly of what I actually saw that I've got to preference my, the beginning of my interview and my conversation, and also pleased to meet you, Connor, with you all. So yeah, we'll get into that, and I've got to also kind of warn you, Paul, because what I'm going to broach about what this millennial reign was about and what it meant for the dead who were in Sheol or Hades, and what I think Christ promised them. It's going to put me sort of all along the lines of me being accused of like being a Christian heretic, but you're all ready for that kind of stuff, Paul. You spitball a lot of stuff. We go the whole way with you. So but
it comes with the territory, unfortunately, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does come with the territory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you say that Christ's 1,000-year reign has come and gone, immediately you're going to get attacked. In fact, it's almost like a civil war. A Christian civil war is breaking out along the fault line. I thought flat Earth was bad, but this is like really bad. I mean, this is like another major fault line. And for whatever reason, I don't know why God is, I don't know why more people's minds can't see it. It's like it's self-evident. But for some reason, there's a lot of our brethren, and they are our brethren, they can't see it. And so it is creating quite a sort of a civil war. But yeah, so I'll go into that. I've got my notes laid out. So let me throw it back to you, and then Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, Connor, same questions to you, really. So how do you feel about all of this? Because this is like, we're a few, maybe 5 years into this officially breaking, aren't we? That's like a topic at all. No one had even talked about it until maybe 5 years ago, when I think Exploring Tartaria and Conspiracy R Us kind of first kind of just brought it up like offhand as like, this is an odd way of viewing it, don't you think? And it's kind of, we just snowballed with that ever since, and it's been getting way out of hand. I think even she, who made those videos that blew everyone's minds, has just disappeared and receded. Even she's scared of carrying how much this got away from her in a sense. But I'll leave it to you, and introduce yourself as well to the guys, of course.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paul. It's great to be here. This will be, I think, my third time on Understanding Conspiracy. Really awesome, and I'm really glad to be back. I don't know what's going on. I guess we're having some mic issues, but that's beside the point. We should be fine today. Mm-hmm. generally, I mean, I have my channel. It's called The Cult of Khan. I do a couple different shows on my channel. Midweek, we do a show called The Main Character, which is just kind of like a variety stream. We talk about anything and everything on there, but, always from the same lens of this, I guess you could say a Christian worldview, millennial kingdom kind of perspective worldview. And then Sunday, I do a Sunday service, which is kind of more scripture focused, kind of, I guess it's kind of like church, I guess you could say. It's kind of like my version of doing church. So, and then I have a couple new shows. I started doing a show on Monday nights, which is called Guys Gotta Eat, which is kind of like, it's in the experimental phase, but it's an excuse to get away with eating food and talking about it. So that's Monday. And then Friday, I've started a new series from my fitness brand called Bulge Khalifa, which is going to be like fitness. And I'm working on developing that as well. So there's a variety of things available from the Cult of Khan. But like I said, it's a Christian worldview channel. And then we understand that some of the things we're going to talk about are a little bit crazy. So we just went ahead and called it a cult before they could. So there's that.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Millennial Kingdom stuff, I'm definitely not any kind of a trailblazer to this stuff. I mean, I've always been kind of a conspiracy research guy, especially in the last 10 or so years. But I think I was a little late to the game with Millennial Kingdom. I was going through, kind of personal development and kind of finding my faith in the Lord, like, onto the path that I'm on today, over the last probably 4 or 5 years as everyone was uncovering this. But I felt like it was I played catch up pretty quick over the last couple of years, just based on the fact that, I had this sort of, I guess you could call it the kingdom revelation, which is, coming to the realization that Christ is like operating a different kind of government than like in America where we vote and have democracy. It's just something different in its concept. And then realizing that that concept exists and how much he was speaking about it. The teachings of Christ are very much more focused on his kingdom rather than his crucifixion. And in Christianity, not to take away from the validity and the value of his crucifixion, but we tend to focus all of our energy on the means rather than the end when it comes to Christ's sacrifice in the world and like what he did for all of us and for his greater plan for humanity. So, like I said, it doesn't take away from the importance of his sacrifice, but we have to understand why he came to do that for us, to save us, of course, from our sins and iniquity, and also from this enemy that dwells in the realm, the rulers and principalities and high places that he speaks of. And then at the same time, the establishment of his kingdom, the primary purpose of his redemptive work is to restore the order of the universe that he created in the beginning. So,
well,
with all that, go ahead.
Well, as when we first started talking, the first 30 seconds of Hijacker speaking was muted, and that's my fault. So my apologies to everyone listening there. It's because I switched screens, and on that version I had the volume down. But Hijacker was saying there in this talk and what he wants to do, we are going to kind of talk about Christianity today, what it is, and how there does seem to be these prominent, odd ways of doing it, which may not necessarily be the way we should be doing Christianity. I often call it churchianity. And what you kind of alluded to there is something I had this thought in my head. It's kind of, I imagine like the Passion of the Christ film by Mel Gibson, where it's nothing but just brutal torture for like 3 hours straight of Christ and just how horrible his crucifixion was. And it's kind of Christianity, not all of it, obviously, but does have this morbid tendency to focus on the sacrifice of God's Son more than anything. And of course, we're thankful for his sacrifice, and that's exactly what we needed. And he paid for our sins in many ways, and now we're covered by his blood in the final judgment. But what you're saying here is this theory, in a way, does help us realize what the point of the sacrifice was. And it's often a contention I've heard a lot against Christians. Even I heard it when I was like not even a Christian myself. It's like a death cult, It's this obsession with this torture and bloody death of this guy being nailed to a cross. You know what I mean? It's like then they drink the blood in the Catholic like church, you know what I mean? And they eat his body. It's like a cannibal, flesh-eating cult type of thing. And it's kind of, this takes that away. It takes that naive, annoying, edgelord view of Christianity away. It's kind of like, no. After that means the ends came not long afterwards, and a beautiful world of Christendom was established, of beauty and form and perfection. And it's kind of that once you realize this existed afterwards, again, it can shift Christianity away from a torturous, death-focused religion to a future forward-looking kingdom perspective religion, which I think is what Christ wanted for us. He wanted us to focus on the benefits of his sacrifice, not his torture and death necessarily. Because I guess we haven't really got much else to talk about or think about, have we? When we was kind of, I wouldn't say left there, because we had the apostles doing their thing afterwards, but it was kind of, it's been left on a cliffhanger for 2,000 years, so we've got to kind of just rehash the old story we have, isn't it? So anyway, so that's just some thoughts I had there, and Hijacker, back to you. Do you have any thoughts on any of these ideas?
Oh yeah, no, I got tons of thoughts on that, but yeah. So what we're really dealing with, and I'll get into the thing that I personally witnessed as far as the what happened on May 10th, that night at about 11 o'clock. But there's three main problems that Christianity has that everybody pretty much acknowledges they are a problem. The first one is that when Christ says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and the light. Nobody comes to the Father but by me." And so that is exclusive. That means, and so even this secret was hidden from the apostles themselves. They said, well, what about people who don't hear the gospel of Christ? You know, the Aborigine or somebody who lived in a different time and space or you know, whatever. They never even heard the name of Jesus or Yeshua. How can they be saved? And so even the writers of the New Testament says, well, it's by their conscience. Their consciousness is given by God, and they know they've given their consciousness. So even I, all the way up until a certain point, a few months ago, maybe a year or so ago, I would say, well, if a Muslim was living a good Muslim life, even though he didn't know Jesus, the way that he would actually be able to be introduced to God is that he would die and then he would come face to face with Jesus. And then the essence of his life, once he came face to face with Jesus, he would either accept or reject Christ at that point. That would be like right after death, even though he never knew, but the essence of his being. And so that's the way he would actually enter into the presence of God, by accepting Christ. Or it could be anybody. If you were a Zen Buddhist or whatever, and you never even heard of the gospel, that's the way you would go in. But this new theory, this earth-shattering thing about the millennial reign of Christ, turned that on its head. So that's the one problem a lot of people have with Christianity. You're so narrow. Everybody has to come through Jesus. Well, yeah. And so this millennial reign theory actually answers that. The second big problem is the nature of man. Why are we all so rotten? Now, the Catholics would say, well, we've got original sin. That's why we're all so selfish. We only do things out of our own self-interest, you know, or if we get paid, it's got to be something for our ego, something. But it's the very nature of man that why are we all so rotten? And we all know we are. I mean, you know, especially once you become a Christian, you realize, wow, I was really a selfish person. And of course, the third thing is if there is a loving God, why so much evil on the earth? Why the child sacrifices? Why the starvation? Why all of this evil that's being done on the earth? If God is all powerful, why doesn't he come down and basically fix things? I mean, you know, we all heard of the horrors that, you know, we do to one another on this earth. And so that's the third thing, that this particular kingdom scenario, this 1,000-year reign of Christ, and this new type of thinking actually answers. So those three big problems. Christ is the only way. That's a big no to a lot of people. Man's nature. Why are we all so rotten and evil and selfish? And of course, the third thing is, if there's so much evil on the earth and God was, you know, all good, all powerful, why wouldn't he stop this? You know, why wouldn't he stop child sacrifice, that type of thing? But so this thing kind of answers some of that. But I have to preface it just for a minute or so, and I'll give you my testimony, my witness of what I saw May 10th. So my son, my oldest son, I've got 5 sons and I've got a daughter, but my oldest one, he kind of keeps an eye on celestial events, stars, full moons, that type of thing. He's kind of a stargazer. And so I don't watch the stars necessarily. That's not something I keep track of. But so this geomagnetic storm, 5 storm, you can look it up, on May 10th of this year, they said it was coming and that the whole United States, all the way down to Texas, was going to be able to see it. And so right before 11 o'clock, my son came in at 11 o'clock at night. Now I live about 60 miles north, sort of northeast in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, 60 miles north of Seattle, Washington. And so I'm in the foothills. I'm in the country. My closest neighbors, like five, like acres away. Everybody's got like small 5 or 10 acre type of farm or land or whatever. So I'm in the darkness in the mountains. And so at 11 o'clock, he came in about 11 o'clock and he goes, "Dad, it's starting." In other words, the Northern Lights. So I went out and I looked straight up. Now the Milky Way, not the Milky Way, the Big Dipper, it circulates across my home every night. In fact, when I turn on my porch and I looked sort of directly up, right above my wood stove pipe, I can see the North Star. So that kind of gives you an idea of, where I'm located at night. So right off the handle of the Big Dipper it's a fairly bright star. It's called Arcturus. And so it's not part of the Big Dipper, but if you take a look at the Big Dipper and you extend out the handle a little bit more, then you'll see this Arcturus star. So it's kind of coming around, and then it starts to get bright, and then it gets brighter. And then the most marvelous thing happened. Think of a bicycle wheel and rays going out from this star Arcturus. And so the Northern Lights are actually coming out in a circular pattern in a bicycle wheel from the star. I'm talking about the blues, the purples, the greenish, the topaz, sapphire, reddish, oranges, glorious rays that go from the star over the North Pole. In other words, they're all coming out from this right above my head. I mean, I'm looking directly up, and that's where it's all coming out. Not only that, but then I saw it blink on the one side of the rays coming out from this bicycle way. It blinked like a light switch, like a Christmas lights. I saw it 4 or 5 times. My son actually saw it first. He goes, "Look, Dad, it's blinking." Unbelievable. Then I started to see star-like UFOs, and I actually counted up to 17. These star-like UFOs were moving back and forth, different patterns, sometimes blinking on, sometimes going off, sometimes going over the whole horizon, right underneath this celestial event that I basically saw with these glorious aurora borealis type of rays going out like in a bicycle right above my head. And then the final thing that I saw was a fallen star shoot directly from this star in the middle of this bicycle wheel of glorious rays going out, and it shot and it came down to earth. It was like a shooting star. What it means, I don't know. I've never read it before, but it's something that was so fantastical, and I've never heard anybody say that before. And not only did I see it, but 2 of my sons saw it, one in another location, which is like a couple miles from me. Neither one of them are flat earthers. For some reason, they got the mind lock. They just cannot. It's a bridge too far. It's one of those things. But anyways, that is what we saw. So I just wanted to preference my my interview, that's something that I saw. I don't know what it means. I'm not claiming some sort of super spiritual, get in a, a white robe and start a new religion or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that is what I saw. Something that's never been seen before. But before I start, Paul, go ahead.
No, yeah, well, Arcturus, I know what that is and what that star is. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it is bright. I know what Polaris is as well. I often see the Big Dipper is like the first like constellation I recognize instantly for some reason before I start looking around. And I've taken night photography, where you focus on the pole star and you watch all the stars kind of rotate around it. And I've never seen anything like that myself in terms of quite an extravagant show. And again, I don't know what to tell you what that means, but I do think we are going to see a lot more things like this happening. Becoming a lot more apparent in our night skies the closer we get to whatever the end of this little season is in some way, because I've theorized about the whole alien mothership appearing at some point from the north, and suddenly becoming visible. I mean,
actually, Paul, I think you got it. I think you actually got it right.
Yeah.
I think what you see at the end of this war of Gog and Magog, which we see playing out right now. We can see it in the Ukraine. You got the Satanic West with their whole tranny and homo global type thing at war with this nation of Russia, which is thoroughly majority. It's a majority. It's Christian, Russian Eastern Orthodox religion, and they're slugging it out. It's a real war, a really bloody war.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that is the war of Gog and Magog. In fact, on the 20th of this month, it will be exactly 1,000 days since Russia was forced to enter the war in the Ukraine. And I think the war of Gog and Magog has gone hot for these last 97 days or something like that, 98 days. And I think that's what we're actually seeing play out, unlike the other narrative that the majority of churchianity, you might say, they believe like in the Middle East with that tribe, and that's a whole, end times, mark of the beast, the Antichrist is going to rise up, and the whole that eschatology that that actually.
And that would be interesting, that while we're all focused on this supposed Holy Land, Middle East, so-called, which we know is probably not even true anymore, and we're all imagining Revelation, end times, tribulation to come upon us, the actual end Gog-Magog war is currently in its full throes, and we should be paying attention to that instead. That's an interesting way of viewing it. It's like a smoke and mirrors, look over here while we do the magic trick over here type of job that these guys like to pull, isn't it? Now, I don't know myself if that is the final Gog-Magog war, where he gathers an army, the numbers of the sands of the sea. But I do think, as the Bible is kind of a fractal book in that sense, I think we'll see mini versions of Gog Magog kind of unfold before the big one, if you get what I mean. So it won't surprise me if it was all a part of the same thing. And
well, I have a different take on the timeline. I know most people in this community of the Millennial Reign community, they believe that basically that Christ's 1,000-year reign was right around 530, 536, all the way to like the 1500s. And it's only been like in the last couple hundred years that we've actually entered the little season of Satan. But I actually have a completely different take on that. And that I actually don't believe that's the actual timeline.
No,
that the timeline is actually a lot deeper, a lot longer than what people would thought. But I don't want a Bigfoot. We got Connor on, so I want to make sure that I let Connor, because I'm like you, Paul. I'm a motor mouth. I can keep talking. So let me back out of here, and then I'll get to talk about the crown jewel of God's creation, which I believe was the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Go ahead.
Hey man, it's great to hear what you have to say, dude. I'm glad to be able to share the platform with you, Hijacker. I mean, I listened to the last couple of podcasts of you coming on here, and I think that what you have to say about the Sheol and the what you would call, I guess, the fair shake. When I first heard it, I was having kind of some dissonance, you know what I'm saying, with the idea that I might be in some way like a I don't even like to use the word reincarnated, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like if you had never known Christ, you never really got a fair chance to decide who you serve, right? And in that theory of yours, it gives us like an opportunity for redemption, even if we lived in a time long since past. It's something that at first gave me dissonance, but when I listened to it again, it started to really resonate with me. So I mean, I know there's so much to unpack here about Millennial Kingdom, but my experience has been that um, most people in this field are pretty, honest in their pursuit of the truth. I mean, obviously, we're going to have detractors and naysayers with anything that you do that's new or different. But in this context, I think it's really awesome because you have almost something like, like when you say that you saw this sign earlier, the Bible says that the stars are there for signs and for seasons. And, uh, you know, we could very well have just missed out on something that meant something really significant. We're so detached from who we used to be as a people. It's kind of like what I was talking about in Sunday service today about how the beginning of Satan's little season is the beginning of all of the great deception that the Bible foretells will happen to the earth, that he goes forth to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. And when we look at stuff like the timeline deception or the missing history or altered history, it stands to reason that the purpose for why we don't understand all of the details is because Satan has been actively at work trying to obscure those things to prevent us from getting to the bottom of this. Ultimately, because as you said, these are the biggest problems that face the Christian worldview in the modern age. How can we explain some of the things like if Jesus is the only way to heaven and Jesus only existed during a window of history, what about everybody else? I think that's a great question. And just like what you said with some of the other issues that Christianity faces, this millennial kingdom and the overarching theory of how it provides a restitution for people who didn't get to know Christ in their life prior. It's a really awesome, all-encompassing theory. I think it was referred to as like the hijackers, like grand unifying conspiracy theory, and I just thought it was awesome when I heard it. So I think that you have a lot of great points to add, man. I think as we all are digging into this thing, we're all getting an opportunity to kind of stretch our own ability to question what we believe. I think the most impactful thing about this whole millennial kingdom thing has been the way it's rewritten my worldview about Christianity specifically. Because for the longest time, I think we grow up with institutionalized, like I think Paul called it churchianity, and we get taught to view the Bible through a lens instead of viewing the world through the lens of the Bible. You know what I mean? And it doesn't necessarily mean that, people will argue, oh, there's different versions of the Bible, there's different canons, there's different, translations and things. But one of the things I heard JT from JT Follows JC, I heard him say, at the end of the day, if what you're searching for is Jesus, you will find him there. And I think that as Christians, people who claim to be followers of Jesus, if our priority is to follow him, then he can do the work in our lives that we need done. I can say that in my own experience in just the last few years, my my devotion to Christ is the thing that illuminated me to all of these things. I don't think that I ever would have come to the realization about all these things if my mind hadn't been set on putting Christ as the priority in my life. How can you say that everything that the government and that the Department of Education or movies and books and our whole world is keyed to this state religion where we live on a ball flying through space and we all evolved from tadpoles, and there's so much about like what we think about ourselves that's considered the official religion of the world, and all of those things are refuted by the words of Christ. To be a true follower of Christ is to basically die to yourself, to die to the world, just like what he tells us to do. So in a way, it's kind of like you can't do what he says unless you really mean it. It has to actually make sense to you to say, I don't know how to associate with the things of the world anymore the way I used to. It's not to say I can't enjoy movies or whatever, but you know what I'm saying? I'm sure you guys are the same way. Whenever you see something, you're looking at it from this new perspective now. What are they hiding in the subtext? What are the secrets that are being generally revealed in the movies and entertainment? And what are they telling us without telling us? You know what I mean? It
Hmm.
changes the way you view everything. And Christianity is another great example of that, the way that it becomes so much more real and not just about, you know, country club. It changes everything, you
Hmm.
know?
It does feel like a revival of first century Christianity of those who were awaiting his kingdom to arrive, I feel like were very deadly serious in a place. Well, at least we are in this like little season community. It's like the final end time great white throne judgment is right around the corner, and we're living in that time. It's deadly serious to us now. It's not like this nebulous concept of like, ooh, no man knows the day or the hour, tribulation, utter destruction's about to come on the earth, and then we get to reign with Christ for 1,000 years. I mean, it's more of a, we now actually know exactly where we are in time. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of, we've been told, oh, you know, we're living through like a 2,000-year church age. It's kind of, what? Like, what? That doesn't make any sense, you know? It's kind of...
Even if we don't know the dates, right? Like, even if we can't point what year is it really, it doesn't matter, because we know that based on the times we're drawing near. Like, I don't want to be that guy who's like, it's the end times. I think I said, if it's the end times, there's no point in subscribing, because we aren't going to be here next week anyway, you know? But
yeah. No, I agree. But I get a comment all the time, which maybe we should kind of address. And a lot of people really don't understand what we're talking about at first when we start discussing these ideas. And it comes from the Christian camp. And they always say this: if this was the 1,000-year reign, people would live longer. There'd be no death. You know, and people would only get better in that time, and there'd be no sin and all these type of things. And they all immediately assume we are saying that we are currently living in the millennial kingdom. And I always have to say the same. I'm kind of on repeat. I just leave a comment saying, it tells you in the book, direct quote from Revelation 27, chapter 7. It tells you right there, when the millennial reign has ended, Satan is let loose for a short season to deceive all the nations. It ends. There's a point where the reign ends. And then, yes, all those people who lived during the reign probably did live for a long time without sickness and had a wonderful time. We are not in that time. And they have this conception that if we're talking about, well, you know, tribulation has already happened, they assume immediately, I'm telling them, that means we're living during the millennial reign of Christ. And it's kind of, how have they become so lost that they don't know the rest of the story? And it baffles me every time that's kind of like the knee-jerk comment I always get. And it's like, why am I some random guy who's like a pretty new Christian, you know, like, what's it, like 10 years or something like that, you know? Why am I the guy that has to tell you, read the rest of the book, it tells you the millennial kingdom ends, and there's a little season that we could be living in. It's kind of, why am I the guy that has to say this? And it's odd. It's so odd. And this whole thing in itself is like I said, a revival movement of some kind. It's a weird one, and I'm not looking to become like a church leader or like a pastor or anything. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to start a cult about this. You know, maybe Connor is. I don't know, but you know, it's like, but it feels like I can't stop talking about this. I can't just let this slide. Do you know what I mean? Like, no matter how much it offends people, how much it confuses them, it's kind of this is not going away. That's what I said a year ago, and it is getting bigger. I am having pastors and church leaders emailing me saying, like, I need to talk with you. I've just heard this. This is blowing my mind. And these are people who have ministries who have never even heard of this concept before. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's odd. Sorry, go ahead.
They've written books. They've written dozens of books, literally.
Yeah.
Talk about the Great Deception, if you want to know what the Great Deception was. But the clarity that this new paradigm gives you, once you understand it, all of a sudden, it's like you're on a mountaintop, and you're almost like the clarity is just through the roof when you can start to see, you know, like these three fundamental problems with Christianity. All of a sudden now you understand, oh, if this is the case, and that Christ's 1,000-year reign has come and gone, and he built out the infrastructure of the world, he did what he did, now we understand why, and you know what, other words, what the whole thing is about. It's like putting together a great jigsaw puzzle, and you finally get a couple of pieces, and then all of a sudden you see the pattern, and you go, oh, that's it. So you get that clarity. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Well, do you want to maybe re-explain here now? Maybe because obviously you explained it over a 2-hour podcast, but let's try and get it down to like an elevator pitch. Do you want to explain what your idea was about the purpose of the 1,000-year reign to the audience now? Maybe because we have some new listeners, it might be worth kind of reiterating the whole idea because it is a good idea. It's a very valid point.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll take it from how I understand it. So I actually believe right from the beginning that God created billions, maybe even more than that, of conscious beings. They said the sons of God, there was a great light when Yeshua was unveiled. They sat in darkness. There was a great light. Then we know about the war in heaven. A third of the angels with Lucifer, Satan, they rose up. And then Michael and Gabriel and the archangels and a third of the other angels fought back. And from my take, I actually believe that there was a third of the angels that didn't know what was going on during this war in heaven. And we basically sat down and we cried. We didn't pick a side. And so personally, I can't say for sure, but I actually believe that we were slated. Okay, because you did not choose in the war in heaven, you were the third that sat down and basically cried, then you are going to choose and you are going to incarnate into flesh, be the man creatures. And so we kind of start from there. That's what I actually believe where we started from. So then let's take us all the way up to Christ's crucifixion. I actually believe, Connor and Paul, that when Christ was crucified, that he actually, it talks about him going into Sheol or Hades. And it says that he actually went down, and the book of Enoch talks about the dead. And there's 3 types of dead. The wicked, which are in a place called hell, which is separate from, in the New Testament, it's called Hades. And in the Old Testament, it's called Sheol. It's different than that place. But in that place, Enoch talks about there are the righteous and the sinners. So you got the wicked that go to hell. You got the sinners, which sit in this soul sleep type of place of Sheol. And then also you got the righteous that were there. It says Christ went down. He immediately released the righteous, the prophets, David, Adam, all the rest. Once Christ was resurrected, they came right behind him.
They call that the first resurrection, right? That'd be the first resurrection.
That was the first resurrection. And so what I believe, and if you actually take a look at some of the Old Testament scriptures, it talks about the sinners, or the dead were in darkness and they saw a great light. And it also talks about, them understanding that Christ had come or whatever. But we all know, according to scripture, that you cannot come to God unless you come by faith through Christ. And so I'm sure there was billions of us down there at the time. And they go, well, we believe in you now. I mean, you're 300 foot tall. You're burning as bright as the sun. Yeah, we believe you're the Son of God. But I believe that Christ basically said to these billions of sinners, no, you got to wait. Or you can only come to me through faith. And what I have to do first is I have to set up my kingdom, build out the infrastructure, all the different things that's needed. And then when you all are released, you're going to be released during this age of duality, when actually Satan is going to be released. So you're going to have a straight up fight. You're going to have your memories wiped, but you are going to get a chance for even those who don't even know my name or don't even know any of the concept at all about the Son of God. You're talking like the Aborigines and the people who lived, who never even, not one thought about the Son of God. You all will get a chance, which clears up one of the main problems of Christianity, in which everybody, I believe, Christ basically gave him. And you got to remember, when he went to Sheol, all authority in heaven and earth were given to him. And so he had the right to make the judgment on what would happen to these quote unquote billions of sinners that were in Sheol. But I think he made them a promise: you all will get a straight up fair deal, fair shake. You will get to reincarnate, and you will come face to face with whether you want to accept or reject. You want to go the dark way, okay? You want to go the selfish way, okay? Or you can come my way and come God's way, which is what we call becoming a Christian. And so this is actually what I believe. Then we hit 70 AD. Then he descends, and there's all kinds of, if you actually take as a baseline the words of Jesus, like over a dozen scriptures from his own mouth. Truly, truly, I tell you, there are some standing here that will not taste death, but see Christ, but see the Son of God coming in his glory with his angels. Over a dozen scriptures. So from his mouth alone, those who pierced me shall see me come in the clouds. And so when we hit 70 AD, what I believe is that was it. That was it for mankind. The full 6,000, 5,500 years, whatever it was, that was it for man. It was done and over with. Everything. But God in his like glory and like something nobody thought about, none of the prophets thought about. Christ says, nope, I got one last trick. I got one last thing that I'm actually going to do. I'm going to build the infrastructure of the world, and then I'm going to release these billions of the dead. He literally saved us from the pit. When it talks about, all these different scriptures, thank you, Lord, for saving me from death. Thank you for saving me from the pit. Oh, we were literally dead, lost, over. We were already sitting in the waiting room for hell. And then all of a sudden Christ shows up and goes, nope, you all are going to get a fair shake. Even if it takes more than like 1 or 2 lifetimes. I'm not talking about reincarnation. I'm talking about a soul actually being like think of a soul being like a plant or a fruit tree or a vegetable. Each soul comes to maturity or gets to the level of which they can actually use their conscious free will on deciding of which way they want to go. For instance, 50 years ago, think about a girl in Nigeria, a black girl in Nigeria that was in Muslim culture. And they never even heard about Christianity. Well, by the time she's 12 years old in that type of culture, she would have been married to a 50 or 60-year-old imam, become a child bride, and she would have never even heard the name of Jesus. You go back 50, 100 years ago, she would, that's not fair. She never got a chance to hear it. What I'm saying is that he actually made a way in which all souls will actually have a chance. And so at this particular 70 year, when the 1,000-year reign started, it was over for man. And then you see actually the crown glory of, or the crown jewel of God's creation was Christ actually coming back, fixing the world, which was utterly destroyed. The seas polluted everything. He not only cleaned it up, but then he fulfilled what God actually told the first Adam, what he told Adam, be fruitful and multiply. Adam was pretty good at that, a lot of people. But the second part, and take dominion over the whole earth, or in fact, the whole earth, the things that walk on the earth, that crawl on the earth, that fly, the fish. And I think that's when he actually built out, and we got maps for this. We got old world maps of cities built out throughout the whole world, all the way through Siberia, all the way down through Africa. There's even a couple right on the edge of Antarctica. I mean, he built this place out. And of course, I've got a theory on, how 90% of this whole old world was wiped out. But I don't want to keep on rattling on. But yeah, that's the basic theory, Paul, is that what he actually came back and did, and the reason why he built out this kingdom and this old world Oh, and the whole infrastructure, the breadbaskets of the world. Just in the United States alone, over 300,000 miles of canal were already dug in all the different 50 states, even before the bulldozer was invented in 1926. How does that happen? All of the walls, there's walls like everywhere. And we can go into why he had to build out the world the way he built it out. Of course, he knew that a pretty violent and vicious lot we were. I mean, we were the sinners. He was going to release back on the earth for all of us to get our chance. But anyways, one of you all pick it up. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking into these ideas after we had our first conversation, it very much does feel like after the 1,000 years, those who were in control just before pretty much just picked up and carried on exactly from where they left off and just kind of pretended those 1,000 years didn't happen. And it does seem like Satan had like a army of men on the earth through his own secret society network ready to take full control as soon as the reign ended. And in a way, herd like cattle the people who suddenly just turned up and just flooded these seemingly empty cities all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And you look at you look around at the earth, don't you? And you look at these beautiful buildings that were created during a supposed, Middle Age, Dark Age, medieval period. And it seems like overkill. It's like they are so extravagantly large, some of these cities. And it's kind of like, according to the populations that should have been existing during these times, who were these buildings for? Exactly, you know what I mean? Like, there shouldn't have been people around to even get anywhere near to filling these cities. And it does kind of, again, this theory, and obviously what you were talking about there, kind of makes sense of this. It also makes sense of why suddenly now there's a huge uptick towards the end of a little season, let's say, if that's where we are, of abortion. This explains that move. Do you know what I mean? Because if we are souls, in a sense, being resurrected until we make the right choice, perhaps, or maybe until we just make a choice, whether that's the right one or the wrong one, consciously knowing Christ and the devil in our choices in this matter, then to slow down that process, it would make sense that Satan would try and cut off those souls before they have a chance to even open their eyes properly, and that's an explanation for why that is such a prominent and forced and pushed thing. And the death cult who does that claims they're doing it for depopulation to help save the planet or some nonsense like that. But this theory makes a lot more sense.
It's also the wars, Paul.
Exactly,
if you think about the wars, now my understanding, this is just my understanding, is that at 70 AD, that's when the Millennial kingdom started. It did go for 1,000 years. And in the book of Enoch, it does talk about 1,000-year period. And it's a funny scripture. It says during that 1,000 years, or that reign, it doesn't call it the actual reign of Christ, a 1,000-year kingdom. It talks about no year, no week, no day, and no hour will be numbered. A strange thing. It's like, what are you talking about? It's 1,000 years, but you're not going to keep track of the year or a week or a day or an hour. What is that scripture? It goes along with those other scriptures talk about that he will take the city of God, Zion, and he will actually put a veil over it and hide it from men. And so a lot of people are thinking, and I'm in this camp too, that the encampment of the saints is at the North Pole, and that right above the North Pole, veiled, that for some reason we can't see it, is New Jerusalem, that kingdom, which during the 1,000 years, I think it wasn't veiled, it was open. Yet the only ones that could actually enter it were, you had to have a pilgrimage. And I'm sure there was ways, because once you get into this theory, then you throw away all the Ice Age, all of the history. We may have, there might have been a Genghis Khan in the Crusades. Now we're finding out that Muhammad, and the name Muhammad actually means anointed one. And there was no real Medina or whatever, except for a couple hundred years later, in which, the Muslim scholars finally put together their Quran. In fact, there was over 700 different copies of them. In fact, all the way up into 1926, and it was Egypt that finally says, you know what, we got to decide on one copy of the Quran because there's 30. And so they got one, and they took the other 29 copies, and they basically threw them into the Red Sea. And it was only until 1985 that Saudi Arabia decided on, okay, universally, this is the book for Muslims called the Quran. And it was only 1985 that was universal. That was the final book that they actually on. But as far as Muhammad, all the different histories or whatever, we don't know. We don't know. You got to think, if this 1,000-year reign has come and gone, there should be books, there should be all kinds of things. But for whatever reason, like you say, these secret societies, and I believe they are of the serpent seed line. And I do believe in your theory that people can actually make themselves through their choices or whatever, Nephilim. You got the Nephilim were clowns, that somehow they can change their genetics. I mean, it's well known. And this was the late great Rob Skiba. He did a sort of a deep dive on this, but they found, they went into the prisons and they found 10 honest to God murderers. And these are people that are not in prison saying, no, I didn't kill that person. These are people that say, yeah, I did kill him. Yeah, he was messing with my wife. That's right. I put a bullet in that guy. These were actual murderers. People are murdered. And they went in and they tested their genetics. And in their chromosomes, somewhere along in their chromosomes, they all had the identical mark on their chromosomes of these 10 people or 15 people, whatever it was, that actually said, yeah, we did murder. And so do you change your genetics when you do make a choice like that? It's spiritually, does your chromosomes change? Something like that. So, yeah. So I think people can. And so you get, where do these secret societies came from? Well, they obeyed the law all the way up until the last day of the 1,000-year reign before Christ took New Jerusalem and cloaked it and then set the world in motion. But I think you're right, Paul. They all minded their own business. They weren't able to do the child sacrifice. They probably went along with the law. Okay, all right. If the king wants us to, once a year send up the first fruits or whatever, let's go along with the program. We know very shortly that his kingdom is going to be cloaked, and then Lucifer, Satan, is going to be released from the pit, and then it's going to be our time. And we're going to take all these buildings over. We're going to take everything over. And I believe actually that the residual power of the church that was left over, that's where you get the Catholic Church, all the ceremonial and the pomp and the majesty. I believe that it actually got transitioned over, and it actually, Satan's little season actually did start like 2,000 years ago. That I think we're actually in the year, not 2024, but actually it's 3024, that 1,000 years. And they just said, nope, that didn't happen. We're going to cancel that. And then they came up with all kinds of mechanisms to try to hide it. When they first started dating coins, it was actually started with a J or an I on coins. Same with books, like that one famous map. It has I 1320 that shows all of Siberia built out. It shows all of Africa built out. The whole world was literally built out. I think that was a map, and it was actually, the year 320 years after the 1,000-year reign. But I think they tried to trick us by starting to date the coin, saying, no, that 1,000 years didn't happen. I think even the church fathers, that once Christ's kingdom went away, that there was a catastrophe. And basically the church fathers were just trying to assemble, the different scriptures. What do we have left of all this? Let's find out, these different writings, and they put together as much as they could to try to recover after the catastrophe once Satan was released from the pit. But yeah, that gets into the timeline. But anyways, go ahead, Paul.
Well, that's an alternative view you don't hear very often, that there's actually more time added than we're aware of. And that the reason it's hard, well, I would say personally, I do disagree. I think we're finding more and more information coming out now proving that time is a lot shorter than we think, personally. There's a great presentation that just got released. It's from 2016. It's from a chronologist and a historian from Poland. And I'll be doing a talk about it soon with JT and Alpha Talks. I've just been watching it and taking notes, but he is proving that there appears to be a 700-year missing history from the first millennium. So from 1 AD to 1000 AD, he's saying none of the history makes any sense whatsoever. And he has lined up events and he's got some fantastic evidences through archaeological finds that prove there's 700 years missing. So what he's saying is it's actually like the year like 1400 and something currently. It's not like the year 2024 right now. That's just a completely made up thing. He says most of the history after the first millennium is correct, though, is what he's saying. But he's saying that the events after the basically tribulation, he's showing these cataclysms that happen that completely just reset everything for everybody. But then he's saying, but then the histories that were made up afterwards don't make any sense whatsoever based on the archaeological finds, basically. And he's saying that there's no overlap in any of these times that they're saying, and we have no information.
Yeah, and there's also a great Russian mathematician. You'll know his name. I can't bring his name off, but he basically said he's a great mathematician from Russia, and he basically said that it was the Jesuits from the 16th and 17th century. They have rewritten all of history going back over 900 or maybe it was 1100 years. And he didn't believe none of it. He says all that stuff was written by the Jesuits. Anatoly was somebody. You might know
Anatoly Fomenko.
Anatoly Fomenko. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
He has a series of books. One of them, he says that he believes that China didn't build the Great Wall and stuff like that. Really compelling arguments. Obviously, it's like we don't know. I mean, it'll probably take us until this is all wrapped up to really say when everything actually happened. You know, we're going to have that like Holy Spirit resolution to really get the numbers. Maybe there's a secret archive buried somewhere we'll one day have access to or something like that. I guess you can hope for that. I just think that with the whole thing, like what you were saying earlier about what purpose the millennial kingdom has, I think that's something that we should really focus on, because I think that as we begin to kind of proliferate this theory around the world, people are going to ask why, if Jesus was given all authority in the world and there's this prophecy of this kingdom that's always expanding, that's never ending, you know what I'm talking about? It makes no sense why you would make 1,000-year kingdom when you had the authority to just fix everything, right? I think that someone who maybe stumbled upon this, it was something I thought about when I first started looking into this, is like, what's the point of doing 1,000 years when you have all authority? Couldn't you just right the wrongs and finalize the judgment already? Almost an argument that the millennial kingdom couldn't have happened because it would all be done already, right? Like God would have reached his point of judgment for everyone. And I like what you were saying about this, and it is scripturally supported that there's the first resurrection, right? And then there's the rest of the dead did not rise until after that 1,000 years. And to me, that makes sense, right? It's like what you were saying. All of this infrastructure, a lot of people say, you know, what's the point of building out all of these crazy buildings and say they did possess advanced technologies and such? What is the point of building to such excess, you know, size and splendor? What's the point of all that? And really, it makes sense. The reason Christ chooses a 1,000-year kingdom is to prepare the world for the arrival of all of us, for all of these people who are being given this restorative chance at eternity, or what have you, a fair shake, I guess you said. And I think
the
that
damned. We were the think about the redeeming work of Christ. We were already dead. We were in the pit. It was over for us. I mean, think about it. And he actually reached down into Hades and said to all of the sinners, probably billions of us, hang on. I'm going to build out this world so that when you come up, and yeah, you are warlike, you are vicious, you are selfish, but you're going to have it out during this little season of duality, this little season of Satan. And Just think about when Christ finally came into his kingdom, and then all the ones that were resurrected with him, with the church. And they go, well, what's the plan, Jesus? And Jesus, I'm sure he said to him, look, there are billions of you that are lost. We need to save them. In order to save them, we have to build this world out, because once they're released on the world, they're going to kill each other. They'll be lucky to make it to 15 years old. Most of them are not even going to get a chance to hear the gospel. They're going to get hit with so many things. Because I'm sure when people started building out the kingdom, you start to take a look. Think about if you were in the millennial reign. Why are we building walls? What's the purpose of a wall, Frank? I mean, there's nobody. I don't got to worry about anybody. Why are we building towers and walls and star forts and, we're doing all this? Because the master, the king, told us that what we're doing is something sacred. We are actually building this place out so that all these people that actually come behind us will actually get a chance to live at least a decent enough, long enough life that they'll get a chance to actually hear the gospel and get a chance to accept it. And so if you take a look at the greatest invention or the greatest thing that has saved more men than anything that's ever been invented in the world is the wall. And so imagine during the millennial kingdom, you're not even knowing why you're putting up a wall, except you're acting in faith. Know that this is what Jesus wants. He's telling us that the rest of the men creatures are coming, and they're pretty damn violent. And unless we put these walls up, they're just going to consume each other like the American Civil War. It's like, when the Europeans came over, they took a look at the Confederates and the Yankees having it out, and they go, that's your concept of war, like last man standing. You wipe each other out until there's only a couple of you left. Yeah, that's what they. But what does a wall do? And there's walls everywhere. Star forts. I think in every state there's dozens of star forts. This one guy, this archivist, he goes into and he finds all these old archaeological sites and different things, these new newspaper articles, and you can just see, wow, they just overbuilt the whole world. And then we can get into how they were destroyed, because we can now know, we can take a look at Siberia, where we see maps where all of Siberia was built out, even a place that was named where the 10 lost tribes actually lived. And all of a sudden now it's just like a wasteland. But anyways, go ahead.
I'll let you take that one, Connor.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I was just gonna say that it's a remarkable thing when you think about how different the maps and stuff that you're referring to, how different they look than the terrain today. Like, for instance, the Sahara Desert on a lot of these old maps has waterways coming in and castles all over the map, and now we look there today and it's nothing but just like a sea of sand. And it, to me, tells me that there's been a great effort done to cover this whole thing up. Obviously, if Christ really did do what he said, come to the earth, return with his kingdom and power to establish this new kingdom. I think I was looking at a scripture earlier today that talked about the enemies fleeing to the mountains and fleeing to the caves and the ragged rocks to avoid this wrath, this coming kingdom with power and stuff. And it all just paints to me this really vivid picture of, Christ came with this purpose to establish this kingdom. And there was a lot of change that came, not just in the way that the world looked on the surface, but even, of the enemies of the kingdom who had to run to the hills, so to speak. And I think that kind of correlates with what you were saying earlier about, the servants of Satan hiding out for this 1,000-year period, plotting their revenge, plotting their takeover strategy for the world. I think one of the greatest pieces of evidence for this whole millennial kingdom thing is how much work has been done to cover it up. I always call it the mother of all conspiracy theories. I mean, if you try to look at any other conspiracy that's taken place and you see the scale and the amount of money and the amount of people that have been involved in pulling off all of these crimes against humanity over the last however many hundreds of years that we can recollect, It's evident that they're all working for some greater purpose, to try and thrust the Western nations into a war in the Middle East. There's all these little breakdowns that you could say, oh, it's Hillary Clinton's Freedom of Information Act request about the Gilgamesh tomb or whatever. There's all these little subset reasons we can point to, and they could definitely be valid. But at the end of the day, it's like Christ said, we face not against flesh and blood, but against rulers and principalities and high places. These are the forces of Satan, so to speak, and it is in his interest to deceive us. Revelation says that when the 1,000 years is expired, he'll go forth to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. I think that's a pretty well-rounded way to describe what we're going through today. I think one of the best pieces of evidence for the little season is that if you look at the world today and you look at like what are the official, like I call them like the state beliefs or the state religions, which are basically what does the establishment tell us about the world? Almost all of those things, whatever is legal and whatever is, scientifically accurate, they're all in direct opposition to Christ. The more I fall into this worldview, I guess you could say, where I consider the scriptures to be the primary truth and then everything else has to work out to make that make sense. When I start thinking about the world that way, I start realizing most of the world's incompatible with that. If you're going to really follow the scriptures and believe what the Bible says, it does put you at odds with the world. That's the truth. And in a case like this, it's you have to go into it with that mindset, right? All of us are people who, at one point or another, kind of gave up on our idea of being like right with the world. People are going to be opposed to whatever you believe. You're going to have to find your own way in life. You can't tell people what to think. And I think that free will element still existed even in the kingdom. I'm sure that during that 1,000 years, there were probably all kinds of individuals and leaders and such who didn't want to, come into order and do what they were supposed to do. And I think that would justify walls and such, to create a separation from those who are like, it's for security for one, but it also keeps people out who haven't, assimilated, so to speak. So when you look at large and advanced walled cities, I mean, I'm sure the dates matter. Like I'm sure there's walls from early kingdom, cities from the earlier kingdom. And then as we go later, you start to see probably even more developed things. There's even theories that some of the most advanced and largest cities don't even exist at all anymore. And that what we've been left with are just like the gravel pieces, so to speak. Like we look at something, we see a 1890s World's Fair building that's 21 acres. We don't have very many buildings like that anymore. We do still have, immaculate examples of nearly inexplicable architecture. But, when you look at a state like Kansas, I saw the Telegram group talking about this earlier, Kansas is extremely large and flat. And it just makes you wonder, is this the foundation of what was once a mega city? Or is it buried? Is it like under 30 feet of mud? I live in the Northwest and the Columbia River Gorge is one of the most picturesque places that you can visit in this part of the country here in North America. And when I drove down the Columbia Gorge a few months back for this seminar I went to, I was riding in the passenger seat. I wasn't actually driving, which made it easy for me to observe. And when you look at the Columbia River Gorge, it's almost impossible with these eyes to not see what looks to be like a city that just goes on for miles and miles down the length of the gorge, almost as if the Columbia River Gorge itself is a canal that was designed to feed these cities. And today it just looks like a big kind of like lava pile. But, it doesn't really match the narrative. There's plenty of areas where they've sprayed the side with concrete. There's still bricks along the walls there. It's got all of the telltale features of Lost Kingdom stuff. But when you see that where you live, I used to look at these, Millennial Kingdom or Mud Flood Tartaria videos and think, man, it's crazy. I wish I lived somewhere cool like that, like Washington, D.C. or somewhere in Europe. And what I realized is just that there's evidence that this kingdom was absolutely everywhere. It's really amazing.
Yeshua went nuts when he told the people, look, I want to build this world out. They were not only enthusiastic, and just think about, they were all moving with the Spirit of God. So they were all operating at their full potential with their full gifts being used. And they go, okay, yeah, we see what you want to do, Lord. You want to save the billions of people that are lost, that are dead. And you want to build this place out. So when they get released, they won't end up just wiping each other out. They'll actually have time to actually come to the knowledge of the truth. Absolutely. Go ahead, Paul. I don't want
to. Well, he also first, I pretty much agree with most of what was said there, and I'm blessed that I live in Europe, so I see these places and these cities, and I feel like Europe has retained most of the leftovers. But I do think what we see in Europe was probably everywhere. Absolutely everywhere, in ways we cannot even possibly comprehend. Enormous, complex, multi-layered cities made of beautiful stone and marble and ornate gems and gold. Everything you can imagine, all the resources at everyone's disposal for 1,000 years of unhindered by the devil inspired Holy Spirit people. You know, can you imagine what could be built during that time? And we are literally squatting in like the wreckage of something that was utterly just decimated when Satan was released, and he's done everything he can through wars, carpet bombings, his own destructive events, fires, weaponry, just playing people.
Paul, I got a theory on that.
Go ahead.
I got a different theory on how these 90% of the old world has been destroyed. That Satan had some type of, and we now know there are directed energy weapons. We can see what they did in the Paradise Fires in Lahaina. Something that could actually, we've seen plenty of pictures of destroyed cities, Charleston, San Francisco, Chicago, some kind of directed energy weapon. And so here's my take on the mud flood. I'm thinking now is that when Satan went to destroy these buildings with this some kind of directed energy weapon that he had, some kind of high technology, that once he was released from the pit, I'm sure he went to Antarctica and the ice giants told him, hey, look, not only do we figured out how to manipulate the energy we learned during the 1,000-year reign, but also all those people that we got in Hades, Jesus says he's going to give them a fair shake and he's going to release them. Oh, is that right? Really? Yeah. But anyway, so this directed energy weapon, I think when it was being used, I think the counter was that God opened up the windows of heaven and caused the mud flood. And if you actually take a look at the elevations, a lot of people say, "Oh, it was a worldwide mud flood." No. I live on north of Seattle, and I can tell you that Seattle, a lot of those buildings were dug out, but they were already on a hill. And so, if you actually take a look at the sea level, these different cities that were mud flooded are at different levels on the earth. I think the mud flooding was that when Satan got ready to attack, for instance, like Moscow, and destroy all those beautiful buildings, that God actually opened up the windows of heaven and it rained so hard that he couldn't use the directed energy weapon. There was something about rain, heavy rain, where the directed energy weapon couldn't be used because there's so much rain. The microwaves or whatever it was couldn't destroy the buildings like what we've seen in these pictures. And so I'm thinking that every time that Satan decided to try to destroy a certain city or buildings or whatever, that it was God that actually caused open up the windows of heaven, and they may have figured it out. In North Carolina, here in the United States, they had 30 inches of rain in 12 hours. I mean, there's like a couple thousand people dead in North Carolina. You're talking about in the mountains, whole mountain towns wiped out. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. But so maybe they figured out how to crack the dome or open up a window. But I think the actual God's response to directed energy weapons and Satan going around destroying all these cities was a localized mud flood. That's just the latest theory that I'm working on as far as the mud flood. That was something of God. Go ahead. Thinking
about that, again, I don't know if that's true or not. It's fun to speculate, but just to back up the speculation with more speculation to kind of back up the theory, it would make sense that if God knew the whole earth was about to be completely deceived by the devil, and Jesus he knew that was coming, and the devil was going to do everything he possibly could to try and erase any evidence of the millennial reign, would it not make sense for God to preserve many of these places underground? So in the future, when people do start digging them up, it's kind of like the testimony of the millennial reign would then come to be revealed during the correct time when necessary, when it would be revealed. And it's buried so much, even the devil can't destroy it anymore. but humans can certainly uncover it once more. So in a way, that's a kind of a smart move by God if it was his choice to do that. Just thinking about it, this is just spitballing here, just trying to imagine that scenario.
He etched his testimony of his 1,000-year reign and who he was actually in buildings in stone, sort of like when he etched the 10 Commandments in the stone tablets for Moses. There is something, I forgot what the scripture is, but it's something about I will give testimony or witness by these stones or by stones, something like that. I can't quite remember it, but yeah, that makes sense, Paul.
Another thing I also want to bring up I was looking into the Daniel prophecy and his vision of the kingdoms, the beast kingdoms, from his dream and the interpretation of the dream. And there's an interesting passage in there, and it talks about in the middle. I don't have the quote with me right now, so forgive me if I butcher this. But it basically says that the kings of the final beast kingdom, which is diverse and unlike any other kingdom that came before it, and it explains how it will be again, and it's kind of going to be a resurrected kingdom. The kings and rulers of this final kingdom, and by final that means the last kingdom before tribulation. That's what we're talking about here. And we're talking about Rome, aren't we? Basically, it's discussing Rome. It explains how the kings of the land at that time would be given longer life. The life would be given longevity, and they'd live. And they'd have to live through Christ's reign, it explains, basically. And have to watch as the saints are given their kingdom. It's given to them, and the saints get to rule over it, while they have to live with extended life through the reign, watching their beast kingdom being ruled by Christ's men instead, basically. And that's kind of like a punishment, isn't it? Like how God made the Watchers watch their children kill each other. That was kind of the punishment for the Watchers for creating the Nephilim. In a way, it's kind of like the punishment for the leaders of Rome who were persecuting Christians and beheading them. It says, I'm going to make you live through my reign. You're going to watch the whole thing. You're going to see what we've done with it. We're going to see what we were going to take your kingdom off you, and we're going to turn it into something that only works for the glory of God. And in a way, that's why it seems like when, the millennial reign ended, obviously during the millennial reign, we had Gothic cathedrals being built. So we had far more complex buildings being created than anything Rome can create. But scattered among all of these, Gothic cathedrals are Roman architecture, Roman Colosseums, pillared, Corinthian pillared architecture everywhere. The traditional Roman round arch style is everywhere on the earth still today. They made some incredible things, but then in between them all is this red brick, multi-layered Gothic style architecture, which is far more advanced and intricate and complicated than what the Romans did. And it's like overshadowing everything Rome created. But then when the Millennial Kingdom ended and we had like a renaissance, they call it, of enlightenment, in the 1700s, it was Roman revival architecture. And suddenly it's like the people who had to live through the reign, as Daniel explained in his prophecy, they took over again immediately, tried to destroy as much as they could, working in tandem with Satan's agenda to try and destroy as much as they could of that and re-establish the Roman Empire. And everyone, and that seems to be the symbolism in all the Illuminati stuff, using that old-fashioned term now. But the secret societies, those that hidden hands, are obsessed with Rome and the Roman Empire, and they want to establish the new Little Caesar New World Order in the style of the Roman Empire. And that does make sense if they are the people who had to live through Christ's reign, who were from the original Roman Empire. And we are in the revival of that beast in the final time for the Little Caesar.
Right. Well, it actually does say that. It says there are 7 kings have come, and the 8th has not, but the 8th will be like the 7th.
Yeah.
And this historian, was on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about the nature of Rome and the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire. And he goes, it's really strange. He says, we've got what we know, like in the movie Gladiator, we got the typical Roman type empire and Caesars and stuff like that. And he goes, and then it's like overnight, all of Rome changes and it becomes this like Holy Roman Catholic Church type of empire. And so you talked about they would have to live through it. And that in itself is a mystery. Why would God, Jesus during his 1,000-year reign, why wouldn't he wipe out the Canaanite bloodline, the serpent seed line people, but it says right there in Zechariah, no, he's not going to do it. But he does say that anybody of the Canaanite bloodline, they will not enter the house of God during this 1,000-year reign. So, but why leave him on the earth? Yet he did. And we do know there was giants too. So it seems like he set the rules. He restored the law of God to all of the earth. As long as you didn't break it, then he let these people grow right up, these secret societies or whatever, go right along with them. But you're right, Paul. There was while all of a sudden the radical transition from what we know as a Roman Empire, which looks like it ended 70 AD, and then after the 1,000-year reign, it seems like Satan, when he was released, he says, well, you know what? I can make them think that we're back in the Roman days. I'll just do it. I'll just say that's what happened. It was Roman architecture. That's what built all this stuff. And he just picked it right back up. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's I'm right along with you on that. You know, when we think of Rome as an empire, a lot of times what we imagine is like late period Rome, like Lorica, Segmentata, armor, and you see the Colosseum or like the canals of Venice, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Like these are the images that come to mind in the people who imagine Rome as an empire. But it's just like you said, most of this stuff can basically be attributed to the millennial reign and has little to do with the Roman Empire as we know it. And this is probably one of the greatest elements of this conspiracy, of this revision of history that we've gone through, is that you see architectural, like for instance, Vatican City, you know, we're under the impression that's built by Romans. That's the Byzantine Holy Roman Empire's capital. But at the same time, the entire place is built out of the exact same architecture, the exact same infrastructure that is resembled all around the world, where even history tells us that the Jesuits didn't have impact until the 1600s. So how do you get buildings that look just like Rome in South America before Columbus arrives? You know what I'm saying? It basically tells me that one of their greatest efforts has been to revive Rome, like what you guys are saying, and to make it glorious by attributing the works of Christ's kingdom to this Roman, essentially the seventh iteration of Babylon or whatever you would call it. I don't know exactly which, but it definitely tells me that, like, you know, Venice is a great example, I think, because, you know, part of that city was built in a place that like it's you know, several meters underwater at this point. And of course you could build something like that there. So it tells me even just then that we're dealing with the same kind of inexplicable architecture that you see in the kingdom, again, attributed to the Roman Empire. So
I don't think obviously tribulation was an absolutely destructive event beyond all comprehension. And it wasn't just Rome that suddenly ended. Also, you find the northern Viking religions who had a sudden radical conversion to Christianity as well. You know, there was a lot of that going on in northern European countries and all the way around to the Balkans too, you know, through the home of Dionysus and all these other pagan religions as well. You'd find, you know, the Thracian cultures, everything just collapsed all at once. But when you look at the historical record, they've attributed the conversion of these places to happening over like a 900-year time period, with the first disaster hitting the northern regions and resetting the people in like the first centuries, let's say, you know, like in like somewhere, let's say the first century, and then they say in like the 5th and 6th century there was another cataclysm in the north which changed the population radically, and then there was a wide conversion and another cataclysm in, let's say, the 9th and 8th century or something like that. And I was listening to this guy explain it earlier, this Polish guy doing the presentation. He's saying the way they present it, it's like there was this monster that just kept coming back for these people to finish them off, you know. But it's more likely it was all one cataclysmic event that happened at the same time. And then there was this radical change and conversion all throughout pretty much Europe and all the way through to Asia as well, where people just suddenly became Christian. And he shows this problem with the Christian record. He's saying, you know, people who go to university and learn about Christian history. It says the first confronted with this issue about the Pauline scriptures, and he's saying there's this discussion in Paul's scriptures where he's basically preaching and converting to the churches of Asia. Okay, and he's there, and he's talking about these great works he's doing as he's traveling and ministering through Asia, you know, and making disciples, and there's this huge revival of the Asian churches and all these type of things. But there's no historical record from the 1st century of that happening at all anywhere. There's no talk of it from the first century documents of Asia of someone called Paul going around having this mass conversion of them to Christianity, you know. And it's kind of like, so people have always attributed that, well, because it didn't really happen, it's all fake, you know, and Christianity is a big lie, yada, yada, yada. But then when you look at the 9th century Asia, there's a huge Christian overtake, revival, and conversion to what even they call this Paul religion. They even have Paul in the name of what they're following, you know. And it's not necessarily like a Trinitarian doctrine as he says it, because he doesn't believe Paul was a Trinitarian, but it's basically Pauline Christianity. Suddenly was massive in Asia in the 9th century. But we're supposed to be told that, you know, according to Paul's letters, that all happened around before 70 AD at least. So there's like an 800-year difference there. You know? But what they're saying is, it's because there isn't an 800-year gap. They've just told us there is. To kind of remove time, basically, or add time in a sense. And I thought that was fascinating. So it's kind of like, what I'm saying is that all these evidences are just flooding out now. They're just flooding out from all sources. And this guy isn't even like a Christian who's talking about these obvious historical discrepancies. And he's saying, look, you can explain this gap in time of, you know, because the revival that we're told happened in the 9th century was the exact same thing Paul was talking about in the 1st century. They're the same event. There is no gap. And like you were mentioning earlier, and it's Anatoly Fomenko. Is that how you pronounce his first name? I might be saying that wrong. But he's basically saying, yeah, they've definitely added like 1,000 years or something somewhere. And he did it through the population count. He was a mathematician first and foremost. And he was saying our population should be way, way, way bigger based on historical events and timelines and what we're told and the average growth rate populations. He put us roughly around about, like I said, 1400. That's probably where we actually are in realistic timelines. And it's kind of, again, he doesn't come at it necessarily from a Christian angle, not necessarily. He's more like a Russian-centric supremacist angle. It's kind of bizarre, but it's becoming far more apparent that, yes, at some point in the 15th century, our entire history was rewritten and compiled by Jesuits, the Scaliger brothers, I think they were called. And we have Scaligerian chronology as our basis for all history from that day forward. And it's all coming out as a complete lie. People are asking about, you know, Islam in the chat here. I don't proclaim to be an expert on Islam in any way. And I've tried to square it in my mind, well, when did that begin? And I've theorized, or maybe it began, you know, during the millennial reign in the rebellious desert areas of the reign, because it says when people didn't make the pilgrimages to Mount Zion during the 1,000 years to take part in the Feast of Tabernacles, this is in Zechariah, then droughts would suffer those nations as like a punishment. And it's odd, you see all these deserts all over the earth in random places that aren't always necessarily in line with the equator, by the way, and where the sun at the hottest point supposedly is. And you understand that, you know, Muhammad had his visions in the desert, in a cave, in these regions, and maybe it was formed by rebellious angels during the reign of Christ. But at the same time, there's a researcher out there called Lloyd DeLong who's kind of basically showing how Islam was completely invented very recently, and it's not as old as they tell us it is. And it's actually a complete fabrication. And you know, you see, just go to his channel, look at all his recent videos and the people he's talking to, and it's kind of like it's all a lie. Like we, and I tried to say this over and over again. It's like, look, we don't have all the answers, but what we're learning, and it's becoming very, very, very apparent, is we cannot trust what we have been told about human history. None of it, barely any of it. I mean, we can trust the discussion, what they're talking about, the events that happened, kind of, but in terms of pinpointing a time when it actually happened and in what context those things actually happened, we have no idea. You know, history was written by the winners, as everyone's attributed Napoleon to saying. I don't think he actually said that. I'm not sure. Who knows? But we know what it means when we say that, don't we? And I'm not saying these guys are winners, the controllers necessarily, but they're certainly the ones who have the power to control the narrative currently. And it's clear.
Yeah, something like 98% of all the things that are written that we've got recorded is after the 1500s. So think about that. I mean, think about the first book, the Gutenberg Bible, the first book that was printed. They want to tell us that happened in 1494 or 1493. Really? That's the first time somebody actually thought on how to put a book together? I mean, so yeah, you're right, Paul. None of the history that they've had a chance to rework and work and rework these scenarios. Even like, I think they were going off to deceive people about the 1,000-year reign. They came up with the Tatarian Empire. And they go, oh, well, that was a separate empire. Then they realize, 100, 150 years ago, well, that's not going to work. Let's just forget about that Tartarian Empire. Let's not mention anything about a mud flood or whatever. We'll just pick it up from here. But as far as Islam, I heard that Islam was actually a reaction. It was actually a reform reaction to the Catholic Church, in which a group of Christians saying, we need to get back to like praying 5 times a day, ringing the bell, knowing we got to stop, center ourselves, get down, worship God for a couple of minutes. And then they also had a religion called the Mohammedans. And the Mohammedans finally took over what was supposedly Islam, which was actually a Christian reform, sort of like the Protestants were trying to reform the Catholic Church. That Islam was actually a strand of that, and that ultimately it became what we know as Islam, the Islamic. With the
there's also a heavy amount of Gnostic influence throughout all that religion as well. And again, Lloyd DeLong does a far better job than me at discussing all of that. And I don't want to dwell too much on that today, simply for algorithm reasons. We're poking at holy cows here now. It's to the point where we probably lose everything we've ever built. But everyone gets the point, is what we're saying here. In this little season, there are people we're not allowed to talk about. And it's becoming obvious that it's all orchestrated. I mean, let's just look at the works of Albert Pike, for example. And I've been reading some Morals and Dogmas, some passages from it from my own book, just to show what Freemasons believe. And it's well known that there's this plan, a long form plan to foment a third world war. Now, whether that's going to be the final Gog-Magog war, I don't actually know about that. I think it just could be another man-made war they're trying to foment here. But it is basically to turn all the Middle East against one another and get every nation involved in order to exacerbate the Christians and the atheists and to utterly destroy atheism and Christianity in one foul swoop, basically. And we're seeing that unfold now, aren't we? Like, they are orchestrating this. And it would make sense, wouldn't it, that they would want to get rid of all form of religion for a new world order in order to establish Luciferianism, which is the end goal Albert Pike's talking about. They've got to kind of get rid of dogmatic Christian Abrahamic theology, as they call it. And they also have to get rid of atheism, because if you want people to worship a deity, atheism's not going to work either, in a sense. So to do that, you have to destroy both. And I think this final war they're fomenting right now is going to be the thing. And the way they're going to just kind of destroy the atheistic belief is introduce aliens. But it's not going to just be aliens. It's going to be interdimensional ascended master aliens. It's going to be every religion kind of got it right a little bit. And we're here to put the record straight type of thing. You know what I mean? It's like the Christian...
the Prometheans. The aliens that seeded us here in the ancient days.
Something like that, yeah.
Founders.
Yeah. Gods do exist, but not in the way we thought. It's that type of thing. It's going to be some kind of Hollywood epic reveal, because it is all written by the script makers, the Hollywood, the people in Hollywood, the wizards who are writing the magical spell.
Paul, now you're getting... Yeah, Paul, you're getting on... other words, if we are on the war of Gog and Magog, Satan is deceiving the whole world to actually drive us to a point of war. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting into your boy, who you like to pick on once in a while, Elon Musk. Now we're talking, everybody's got AI. You're talking about getting into people's heads. And so they say that we're on the precipice of this new revolution with AI. In fact, people are using it already on their cell phones. If they want to know something, or, you say, what the emperor, a penguin's a little bird. No, there's a big bird. It's called an emperor penguin. Well, people can get on their little cell phone and go, oh yeah, there is a 5-foot tall penguin. So everybody's got now a device in which, using AI, they literally have access to all the knowledge, but their dependency upon it. And everybody thinks that Elon Musk is such a great guy, when they won't stop and think, wait a minute, he owns a tunneling machine. He's got serious deep state defense type contracts. He's got
Brain
Tesla,
chip.
of course. Yeah, he's got the electric car. He's got the SpaceX. He's going along with the spinning global eye. He's got the Neuralink. Wants to put the chip into people's brain. And so now we're on the precipice of this, what they call these, it's either UBI or UIC, Universal Income Credit. And now we also got the personal AI. And so how is Satan going to deceive the whole world? I think he's going to make all of us so dependent on AI and our cell phones, our machines, that he's actually going to get inside our head and actually tie our very livelihood to these new technologies we're on the precipice of, and all with a great smiling face. Looks like a great guy, Elon Musk. He's ushering us in. So yeah, I think that's how they're going to do it. And also, Paul, I do think that at some point they are going to break out the cameras and show the New Jerusalem floating city. And they're going to say the aliens are here to attack us. And that is maybe how they get the whole world to get all their directed inner machines to surround the encampment of the saints, which I believe is at the North Pole, and just say, let's just microwave them. Let's just cook them all. So I do believe you're right that this whole alien card is going to be the last card to be played, except it's going to be played against our Lord. And his kingdom, and his new Jerusalem.
Well, that's even what
you can talk about a little bit about that, Paul. I stole that from you. Go ahead.
Well, even Werner von Braun, the renowned rocket scientist, ex-Nazi rocket scientist turned American asset. His assistant came out saying, there's this plan going down, and it's going to involve space-based weapons. And the final justification for the space-based weapons is going to be an alien invasion threat. After asteroids at first. It's going to be first we need to protect ourselves from asteroids, and then we're suddenly under attack by aliens, the final threat. And then around the same era, I suppose, you had clips going around of Ronald Reagan saying, imagine a world, where all of our differences would suddenly drop if we were facing an outside threat from beyond this world. How quickly we would suddenly come together as one to fight this alien threat. And it's kind of, the seeds have been planted for so long about the alien invasion, over 100 years, since, was it Orson Welles and the radio broadcast for the War of the Worlds? Was it Orson Welles? I can't remember. But the War of the Worlds broadcast over the radio scared people so much to death because it was portrayed as a real emergency broadcast. People were shooting their own grain towers thinking they were tripods at night, It's kind of, the brainwashing has been going on for a very long time, and we know as conspiracy theorists how predictive programming works, and they have predictively programmed this inevitability for a long time. They've invested trillions into the programming for this one. They are not going to drop it. It's going to happen because we have biblical proof that New Jerusalem is basically a giant floating city, and it's kind of okay, so that's basically a mothership from the modern perspective, because we're programmed and trained to believe aliens. Anything like that can only be aliens from out of space, because nobody knows about New Jerusalem and what it's supposed to look like. So when something like that does turn up, the programming will instantly kick in. And, characters like Elon, they're all kind of there to promote further that agenda, that we're going to get to space, guys. We're going to become a spacefaring nation. And through our own technology, we're going to conquer man's limitations. It's basically Luciferianism with a modern technical twist. You will be as gods. You can do it yourself. We'll get there. And it's kind of, we all see through it. It's laughable to us, but wow. The amount of sycophant, cultish fanboys out there rushing to the defense of these billionaires, saying, oh, well, he's doing the best he can for us, especially when it comes to Trump as well. Like, would you rather the other one got in instead? Would you rather the blue side got in rather than the red, or whatever it is? You know what I mean? It's kind of, well, your vote matters. It's kind of like, if you still believe any of that nonsense, if you're still taking part in Masonic theater, which is all it is, then there's no hope for you. But they have pinned their hope on these idols. That's what they are. These are false idols who are not your friends. People genuinely feel a personal connection to these people. Like they know them. Like they like they are their buddies, and like they're defending their brothers. And it's kind of, you need Jesus. That's what I can really say.
I saw grown men crying.
Exactly.
I saw grown men crying and like screaming about that rocket, when Elon's rocket came down and gets captured by that docking. It looked like Star Trek. I'm going to be honest. Like I watched that video, you see it from the CCTV perspective of the rocket coming in. It lands on the gantry thing. It looked to me like I was watching like some Star Trek or something. I think that's where they get everybody, So much predictive programming for decades. And of course, it's all sci-fi, but over the course of time, the CGI has gotten so good that you can't even really tell the difference anymore. And it's like I said, it hasn't stopped. It's only increased. Like over the last few days, our government over here has been doing this UFO, UAP, I don't know, disclosure meeting where the government's like telling everybody about it as we speak. I've seen a lot in like right-wing circles about, and I'll cover this briefly, but it goes along with what you were saying about this like alien deception thing. They've been cooking it up for so long that it's actually become embedded even in like traditional conservative, like normal traditional conservative type people who were the first to say you were crazy for even entertaining the idea that something was out there are now the kind of people who are using it as justification for what's going on in their purview. They'll say something like, well, we don't know if we're even going to make it to January 20th or for the new president to take office because they're afraid that some sort of internal government alien deception is going to come to light, and they're going to do a UFO disclosure and say, oh, unfortunately, there's a UFO sitting over the northern hemisphere and we can't do a transition of power because the Galactic Federation won't let it happen or something. And of course, that's nonsense. But you can see how pervasive the idea is that aliens become so like incorporated in our train of thought that even those of us who are like not even supposed to be believers in it are finding ourselves using it as justification for stuff.
Well, even most Christians, mainly this is through the futurist tribulation now, the second coming is around the corner, rapture theology. Even they have been trained to believe that aliens or mothership equals Satan, the bad guys, fallen angel tech. It's going to be a big deception. And they're kind of right, because I believe it's going to be a double blind. They're gonna release their own Nephilim horde when New Jerusalem rocks up, and they're going to release their own UFOs to make it seem like we're under attack by the giant mothership. But really, it's just them attacking their own people with their own tech to hide the fact that Christ has turned up, and to make us believe we're under attack by aliens. And many Christians are prepped for the alien invasion and to fully fight back, and it's kind of, even the Christians have been swept up along with the narrative of aliens and have been convinced it's a tribulation sign in some way, probably loosely based off of the I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs line. And everyone's like, see, grey aliens. That must be what they're talking about. And it's kind of, well, like I said, this new theory, well, not new theory, but this new understanding of the little season rapidly shifts the alien narrative into perspective. You get it now, finally. They have to pre-program us for aliens, because there is going to come a point where it becomes very apparent something completely alien to people is going to rock up in the sky suddenly. And I don't think people quite fathom what like a 16,000, was it 1,600 by 600, like 1,600,000 mile squared thing is going to look like in the sky. It will completely blot out like the continent, most of the continent of North America. You know what I mean? It's going to be, there won't be a sky if you're under that thing. It's going to be terrifying. It's going to be incomprehensible. Like and all eyes will see it who look north. It's going to be, like I said, imagine that. Imagine the news. Imagine what that would look like,
Too. Like, how they say, oh, the magnetic north, that's what draws all the compass energy, and that's how they, can navigate and all this. Imagine if that really is this millennial kingdom parked over there, right? That holy city. And it's doing something to the electromagnetic field. If that thing comes into fruition, people are going to have problems with GPS, with Wi-Fi, with cell phones. There's going to be all kinds of problems that they'll easily be able to say, see, look, we have failure in the banking system, we have failure in telecommunications, we're having failure with navigation systems, and they can attribute all of that to the aliens doing some sort of, it's an EMP, they're attacking us. And at the same time, it's just the native understanding of the fact that all of our technology is like cheaply made, counterfeit versions of how everything is supposed to be, right? Like they figured out how to monetize energy. If this millennial kingdom is really like an advanced, utopian style society, I don't even want to say utopian now that I know what that really means, but this advanced civilization with all this free energy, and now they've turned it into monetizing energy. I mean, energy is the biggest industry in the world in terms of like cost for fuel, electricity, all of that stuff. And to think that they could have taken something free and monetized it in such a way it's just another example of how they will use what systems exist today against us. They've built everything up on this foundation of sand, so to speak, so that they can pull the rug out from under us and make it look like something is happening to us. This is, I think, a strategy that the enemy's been deploying for a long time. It's one of the things I think helps me be so confident in the idea that this is the little season. If you follow an artist, a musician, or a creator, you tend to notice things about them. There's things they do, there's a signature that's left behind. And with Satan's deception, he kind of tends to do the same thing. He takes something there and he obfuscates it and he messes with your perception of it without really changing what's there. Somehow he's tricked us into doing and believing things without actually having to build something. You have all these repurposed buildings are another good example. We give credit to the Freemasons of the 17th and 18th century for building all of these buildings, but at the end of the day, that's just them doing what their father taught them to do, right? To teach that they are the progenitors of all of these structures is the same concept. It goes along the same line as, what we're seeing with this alien deception. You have something there, a phenomena that cannot be explained, and then instead of allowing us to discover it on our own and draw our own conclusions, they give us this predictive programming, telling us what to think, that as we come across these things, we have preconceived notions. Kind of like with this whole millennial kingdom thing. If you took a guy who grew up on a desert island and never taught anything about the universe or the world, and you allowed them to read the Bible from start to finish as many times as they want, what would their worldview really look like without preconceived notions taught by the churches or, without influences from outside sources? It's an interesting concept. I think that's where the power of Satan's deception comes from, because he gets to you first. You enter the world as a young child, little baby, and you don't know anything. And from the earliest days, if you're in any sort of a functioning civilization, it's under this like overarching control. There's like what you're taught by the entertainment, what you're taught by education system, what you're taught by, the government and scientific institutions. And I think if we really break it down, everything that we're taught is part of this overarching plan to obscure the truth about who we are, where we came from, what we're doing here, and what we will do in the end. And as part of this great restorative, redemptive plan Christ has for the world. So obviously the main goal of the enemy is kind of, I think about it like it's scorched earth, right? We know how the story ends. In the end, he's cast into the pit. His army is destroyed by the fire of God. It's very clear that the ultimate victory belongs to Christ and his kingdom. So as the enemy of this, with kind of your fate is sealed, it seems to me like it's been his strategy thus far to just do whatever he can to try and cost as many of us our salvation as possible. I think that's the root of all of this great deception.
Well, people...
Yeah, and I think Paul is right. I think if you actually take a look at this whole alien question, it affects all cultures, all people, all races. It's in all religions. We all got that the one common denominator is that alien question. Everybody can see UFOs. We now know that there's others. I've actually seen real footage of little grays, which somehow they've been able to breed some kind of small body where they can put a demonic spirit in it to actually operate. But so we all have that in our consciousness. So I think, Paul, you were right. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, they're going to play the alien card, and the alien card is going to be evil invaders that the whole world, all cultures, religions, everybody has to unite against to stop them, because they're coming and taking over the planet. I mean, that is the best one I actually did hear, Paul, that is actually plausible, that could actually draw everybody together as one.
Oh yeah, but there'll definitely be like the good alien aspect as well, who will turn up at the 11th hour just to save us from the evil aliens.
I agree.
And it'll be Lucifer. It's a false savior. It's kind of a savior from out of this world has appeared to stop humanity from being killed by the Nephilim horde, the evil invading monsters. You know what I mean? And by that point, people are going to be so exacerbated at the end of the rope and tether from such destruction and misery that they'll take anything at that point. And as soon as Lucifer turns up saying, "We have come from the Galactic Federation of Planets of Light, to help you master the ascension necessary to join our forces and become one with the universal government against the evil invading Emperor Zurg, who has come in currently and attacked your planet. We have held them back for now and are protecting them with a shield, but this shield will fail soon. We need to prepare you in time to have a counterattack. We need to go and take the war to them, and we're here to help you reach the pinnacle for necessary peaks of humanity to be able to take on such a threat." And then people will take whatever mark or whatever advancements, they'll Nephilimify themselves, they'll turn themselves into beasts and monsters to go and stand a chance against the evil invading aliens when round 2 comes, And this time, humanity will gather as one, under one banner, with one leader, as a one world government, to unite all as one, billions of them, to go and surround this giant floating camp of the saints. So prophecy has just been fulfilled. The final prophecy has just been fulfilled. And that's the only way I can see it playing out. I can't see that playing out any other way. And that's what every single bit of programming has been preparing us to see it as and perceive it as and to act it out as. There's no other scenario that works within the narrative of the programming and the deceptions they've been laying out for us for so many years. That's their plan. And it sounds like a Hollywood film because it's written by the same people. It's all a script. It's a ruse. It's all just to hide God. It's all it is. So it's ever been.
And they can pull it off because they got AI now.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to the universal income credit, so they're going to tie people's livelihood and being able to make money or have money to it. They got the cell phone in place. They got the frequencies worked out, and so I think you got it right, Paul. I think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be playing this alien card, and they've taken over the North Pole, and that's their base of operations. And we got to go get Zog or Zig, Zerg,
whatever it is. So whatever they call Jesus, they'll call him some evil invading emperor who's come to destroy the world. And it's kind of true, it's like Thanos, isn't it? He comes to wipe out most of the population, but for the greater good, And they're framing God and Jesus as someone evil who's come to end our way of life. And he has come to end our way of life. He's come to end this little season of sin and misery and debauchery and degradation, He's come to put an end to the world as we know it and to establish a new heaven and earth. That involves wiping out the old. So Jesus does come to destroy the earth. He is an evil invading alien from our Luciferian perspective. That we've been indoctrinated to believe and follow. Like, we don't want our way of life to change. We like the way the things are. Who are you to come along and destroy our world as we know it? It's that kind of attitude. They've got us to sympathize with our captors. We're fully Stockholm syndrome. We are fully under the thumb of our brutal leaders, and we are now, there's people out there who are willing to be their own attack dogs and to defend the misery and the captivity they're under. And it's kind of sad to see, really. But maybe what we're doing here today is going to help a few people see through it. Who knows? Or at least get them thinking. Because no one's even thinking. They're just going along with the narrative in a way. Even many Christians are. I mean, if even simply believing, aliens are actually demons, that's still falling into their category of deception because you're still going to join the army to go and fight, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? It's still got you. It's kind of, we need bigger picture thinking here. We need long-term thinking, and it only gets contextualized into this worldview that I've just explained when you consider the little season theory. Only once you know what time you're living in can you make sense of what I've just said there. Any of it. It gets framed very quickly once you consider the millennial kingdom has already come and gone and we're living in the little season. And it won't make any sense to anybody else. And people don't even hear me when I say these things to them. Because someone's still going to leave a comment on this video saying, the 1,000 years has not happened yet. We'd see evidence of it. Tribulation is coming upon us. Can you not clearly see the signs? Israel's now building the third temple. It's the same thing. And it's kind of, you open your eyes. Come out of her, please, my people. Leave Babylon behind. Stop this.
Not only that, Paul. But we Trump, he was able to be reelected on the strength of something like 50 or 60 million Christian Zionists that believe that same type of narrative that you're talking about. And so here it is. It's getting ready to play out. War in the Middle East with that tribe, and they're building the third temple. And so they got it, which, by the way, breaking news, Biden has just authorized the Ukrainians to be able to use long-range missiles deep into Russia, which they haven't done before. And so now 1,000 miles deep in Russia, Russia's going to start getting bases blown up. I mean, this really does look like it's turning into a war of Gog and Magog. I mean, they're getting ready to slug it out, but by releasing all those long-range missiles, this whole thing in Russia is going to have a whole new twist to it.
But maybe, yeah. I mean, like I said, the Third World War does have to happen to, like I said, make everyone sick of religious war in any way, shape, or form. And I can see definitely Russia getting dragged into this, all of Europe getting dragged into this. It's going to be a world war to basically wear down the saints, to wear down believers in Christ, to make people lose faith in God, and to obviously something's going to suddenly happen which puts an end to it all of a sudden. It's kind of like humanity has to be at the brink of destroying themselves, and then aliens turn up and quickly shift our perspective. We shouldn't be killing each other. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all one humanity, and we have an outside threat to bring us all together. You know what I mean? That has to happen. So I think we're going to be brought to the point of man-made war, and then our petty squabbles are going to seem insignificant compared to what suddenly comes upon us from space. That's kind of the narrative, you know. And Trump's a part of that. Trump's obviously promising a beautiful, great world, isn't he? And Connor, you were having a great discussion about this on your last podcast, about giving you something to lose. You maybe want to go and explain that to people, because I think people really need to hear that tirade you went on, because I thought it was fantastic.
Absolutely, man. I'd love to. You know, some things just kind of, I think they just make sense. Like once we really put it all out on the table and think about it, you know, it's like we live in this kind of degenerated Western society. All of you guys know. You know, things are not in the same way as good as they used to be. Obviously, you still have areas of progress, but you know, you used to be able to open up, like, say, Subway restaurant. In the 1950s, Subway opened on a $2,500 startup cost, and on their grand opening day, they made over $2,500. They paid for the entire starting cost of their business on the first day of business. Now, that doesn't exist in America anymore. It costs you $2 million to open a franchise, and I doubt you can sell $2 million worth of sandwiches in a day. So we live in something that is just diametrically not the same. You can't live in a world that is with a cost to operate is so, you know, there's such a difference in the prosperity element. The opportunity is just not there anymore. So people see that degeneration, and it gives people this defeated, apathetic worldview. So many people have given up on relationships because the dynamic between males and females it's been destroyed with feminism and with, you know, red pill macho culture, and just the ways that people have reacted to this planned degeneration. It's only, you know, served Satan's purpose. We're divided against each other by religion. We're suffering through economic turmoil. We aren't getting along with each other, you know, intimately. The birth rate is abysmal. Okay. And so with all of these things going on, people are apathetic and they're tired. If an alien saucer shows up tomorrow, my opinion is that I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to, you know, eat Hostess cupcakes and watch YouTube until they vaporize my house, because I don't care. Like, I got nothing to lose right now. But what Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and RFK Jr. and this whole traditional revivalist show, like this episode of the Masonic Theater, is telling us that all of our problems are coming to an end now. We're going to overcome all of this bullshit that's been happening over the last few years, and we'll be able to have a prosperous, opportunistic future again that's been missing for all of this time. And what I fear the most is that they're working to give us something to lose. Like Paul was saying, we have so many problems right now that if these problems are resolved, we will have so much more to lose. If we can resolve our social problems, our economic problems, our issues with domestic and foreign policy and things like that, you start seeing things worth living. You know, you see people want to get up in the morning to seize the day for their new job opportunity where they can make a living wage. They're excited to get to the weekend to go on a date with their prospective new, you know, girlfriend or whatever. When you give people opportunity and you give them the availability of resources. They'll build for themselves a life worth living for, a life worth dying for. And then when you tell that person, you take me 2 or 3 years from now and you give me a house and that Mercedes that I want, and you give me a couple of kids, a wife, a family to fight for, it's like I'll even be tempted, You gonna sit at home and wait for the aliens to come? Or are we gonna strike them in the heart? Are we gonna destroy them before they can destroy us? It's like the age-old narrative of every alien movie. Independence Day, they're like, we got to get a nuke to the center of the mothership, and people understand that there'll be sacrifices in that, but everyone will see that as like a hero. You look at an alien invasion, it's the greatest opportunity for fame and honor. Our generation is starving for attention. Everybody goes around doing whatever they can to try to get clicks and likes and whatnot. Oh, by the way, we're at 572 viewers. You guys should smash that like button. Make an impact today on that one. But anyway, we're all like trying to get ourselves out there. We're trying to be heard, and it's normal for that, for to people to want to be validated. But it's been driven to such an extreme that when you give somebody an opportunity, like you can not only have like the valor of being a soldier, a fighter in a time of great strife and conflict, like the other great wars that have passed in history, but you have an opportunity to be like a space soldier. You know what I mean? Like you can join Trump's Space Force and you can become a UNSC, Space Marine, and you can fight the aliens with your own hands and with your new enhancements. When you come back to your hometown, you'll be a foot taller. You know what I mean? There's just so many reasons why you would want to do it. I know it's powerful. It's the same reason why when I watched that rocket video, whether it's hologram, CGI, or just some advanced technology that we aren't privy to, when I saw that thing land, I was like, man, they're really getting close to it. Like we're very close to when they're no longer just kind of sprinkling on and letting us go with like, we always fill in the gaps ourselves. They tell you, oh, here comes this impending threat. Here comes this deadly virus or whatever it is. And we fill in the gaps and make our own boogeyman. But when I saw that gantry and that thing landing, I was like, they're going to start giving us, we won't need to be using our imaginations here. They're going to give us everything we need for this thing to kick off, the real footage, And when you start uploading stuff to TikTok that looks like it's a cell phone video and there's like subterranean creatures like tearing people's arms off and beating them with it, when that kind of crap starts happening, people are no longer going to be clinging to their pathetic religion. I remember back in the day, there was a movement of people who didn't want to comply. I think that the movement of people who don't want to comply with the new agenda will be much smaller this time. I think that we had a nice litmus test in 2020 about compliancy and the ability to manipulate people, and I think they got their numbers.
It's interesting because your worldview is kind of like a different scenario to what I said about exasperation of war and misery to a point where aliens give us perspective. Yours is complete peace and security, which is more biblical in a sense, because it says when they say peace and security is when sudden destruction will come upon them. And Trump has been positioned as this person who's just giving everybody everything they ever wanted. I think if someone shared on TikTok, and it says Trump has literally just announced free education for everybody. And he's kind of like within like a week of being like, announced that he won, he's just giving announcement after announcement of just giving everything to people. Everything. And it's kind of like, I'm going to make them pay for it, and we're not going to get any more in debt doing it either. It just seems so, he's promising literally the world. And it's kind of, I'm inclined to start believing it's probably going to actually happen. There's going to be like maybe a 2 to 3 year period now where things just dramatically get better. And it's only going to solidify in the minds of those who are under the brainwashing control that he really is the savior. He really did do great things for us. And anybody who does say anything at all contrary to that will be a heretic to the new religion, which has been established of Trump. You know what I mean? And it'll be kind of this, what, you don't like having nice things? What's wrong with you? You don't like having that fast car and that big house? You want to take mine away from me, dear? And it's kind of, it'll create this cult of prosperity. And then suddenly, like I said, if people have so much, then they have more to lose, then they're more inclined to go along with the programming when the shit does hit the fan.
That's right. I want to back what you say up, Paul, and also Connor as well. So I've been in the political realm for, it's coming up on over 35 years. I mean, everything. And one thing that I noticed, and you can check it, you can recheck it, but you would think that people that got money, the people that got businesses, they got nice pensions, they've got trust funds, they've got land, nice small business. You would think that it would be that class of people, sort of the cream of the crop, which would be the ones that would try to help their fellow man out. What I found out is the more money somebody's got, the more they got to lose, the less impact they have. And if you want to take a look how our world got so dark, especially after these last 4 years, I really blame basically the white Christian male American baby boomer. I'm talking about between the ages of 60 and 80. They didn't organize us. They had their businesses, they had their kingdoms, they had their ministries, and they just went along with it. So Connor's right. The more somebody has to lose, the less they're willing to actually go against the system and try to fix it. And just take a look at all the billionaires on the earth. How many of them can you say is actually working for the benefit of mankind? And I have had this discussion with one of my sons who, he's heavily into the Bitcoin or whatever. And so even these Bitcoin billionaires that all of a sudden made it, why aren't they turning around and saying, we need to help organize you or help make a better world or whatever? Why is there a void there of these people, and with the majority of these billionaires basically being evil, working against mankind? And that's because they got so much. It seems like the more they got, the less inclined they are to help. And I did also want to give a plug real quick along with Connor about, hit the like and share button, but also as far as Paul, guys like me couldn't do and get on the air basically because I am one of those baby boomers, but not rich. But he's a facilitator, and I have watched literally hundreds of people, both in the conspiracy realm and the alternative media, a truther community, come and gone because they don't get support. And so any of you out there, anything that you can do, buy Paul's book, help them, donate, whatever, keep them going. Connor, he's starting his a new station, or maybe a couple. You got to get behind and support these people. If you don't, I've watched hundreds of them just come and gone because they don't have any type of support. So I wanted to go ahead and, throw it out there, Paul, that just try to encourage your listeners to, do what they can. You got a young family, and this is what you do full time. And, I've got a different deal, like with, retirement. But so.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm blessed that I can do this full time. I did not know I'd ever actually get the chance to do this, but I took a leap of faith, and God has provided. And people do support me in ways that I just never imagined, and I'm more than grateful for everything I've already got. I have enough, and it helps me just keep going and have a roof over my head and food on the table, and the ability to never actually truly have to work a day in my life. I get to do what I love, which is talking with people like you and Connor. And really, what I would say is I'm going to pass that ball over to Connor and say, go and support Connor's channel, The Cult of Con. He is just starting out. And, I was in the exact same position he was. And the only reason I got anywhere I am today is because other people helped me. Bigger channels helped me. And I like what he does. I like his attitude. I like his tirades, and I like his style. And I think if you're going to subscribe to anybody and support anybody, direct it towards him, because it's anybody who has an opinion can do what we do. It's not hard to make a video. It just takes confidence and a bit of a leap of faith. You don't need high production quality. You just need an opinion. You need a voice, and share your voice and get in on the conversation. You never know where it will go. You never know who's listening. You never know who can just one day say, I like this guy or this girl, this woman, I want to speak to them, and they'll reach out and send you that email. You never know what the impact you have on people's lives. The amount of emails I've received from people over the years telling me the impact I've had on them it makes me cry. It's so humbling, and you don't realize until you get that message just what speaking can do. We're made in the image of God, and God is a creator. We are creators too, and let's make something that actually helps people. That's what we're trying to do here, isn't it? At the end of the day. Anyway,
it's never too late.
It's
never too late to begin your journey. If you're somebody who wants to be a content creator, or if you find these concepts to be interesting in any way, definitely do what you can to join the conversation. It started with me just recording videos in my room, making audio tracks only, doing Sunday service and such. And over the course of time, the more you do it, the more you feel drawn to expand and grow and invest more time and money in it. And then you can see how what you're doing is affecting the people, like what Paul was saying. And, when people leave comments on my videos, or people let me know that they resonated with the Sunday service teachings, it tells me that what I'm doing is adding something to the world. That we may not have the impact we dream of. We may not be able to change the world overnight or by ourselves, but every step we take is a step in the right direction. So I encourage everybody out here, if you feel like you're drawn to talk about this stuff, you feel led to talk about it, I encourage you to take it up and take those baby steps towards where we're going, because we're all in a different place in our journey in spirituality and our journey of discovery and truth. And as we work together, we do a great job of rattling the cage. I think that's what's so important about where we are right now as a group and as a community, is that we have begun to make enough noise that we're starting to knock on the door of churches around this country. Pastors are going to have to answer for all of this information. And it's the beginning of what Paul was saying, a true revival of real Christ-focused Christian faith based on the true teachings of Jesus, the true messages that he brought when he came to the earth to resurrect himself and to restore humanity. And all of those things are so important. So if we can keep doing this, if we keep contributing, we keep rattling the cage, I think it's exactly what God wants us to do in this time. I think that's why so many people are waking up to this stuff. And I think that there's never been a better time for us to be out here having these conversations. So I'm ultimately grateful to Paul. I mean, Paul is one of the main reasons that I even have subscribers on YouTube. And it's awesome because all of my subs are like-minded people, because they're from this community. I'm so blessed that my community is full of like-minded people. We almost never get a naysayer. So I'm sure that's subject to change one day, but we have an excellent foundation, and that is thanks to Paul. And of course, I'm just grateful to be here with the hijacker. I'm so highly inspired by his theory about the Sheol and the fair chance for everybody. That concept and that theory resonates so hard with me, and it helped to fill a space where I was still looking for answers. And of course, we're always still looking for answers, but it helped me take what I would consider like another step in the right direction. I'm so grateful for that, man. Thank you.
No problem. And if anyone else wants to get involved in the community, there is a Telegram available. The link is in the description of this video, and I'm sure one of my moderators will kindly post it in the chat right now as well. And there's over 1,000, almost 1,700 members in there. We are a very, very open, tight-knit community. We argue, we love, we laugh, we cry, whatever. We do it all on there. And I am always there talking with people as well. And the community is getting stronger and it's growing. So come and join us on there if you haven't already, guys. I think this might be a good place to kind of leave this topic. Any closing thoughts there, Hijacker, before we leave, and Connor, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, well, I just want to back both of you guys up. So there's a scripture in Isaiah. I'll end with the scripture. I think it's in Isaiah. And Isaiah, he just comes from, I don't know, pronouncing something about Jezebel or whatever. Anyways, he runs to the clefts of the mountains. He's like in a cave or something. And it says that, so God came to him, but so there was great thunder, but the voice of God was not in the thunder. And then there was a great whirlwind, but again, the whirlwind was not, the voice of God was not in the whirlwind, but the voice of God came a still, small, quiet voice. And if you actually take a look at where you get information from, it's these little nook and crannies, places like here on Paul's channel, on YouTube. It's not, you're going to get certain information from like a Tucker Carlson or an Alex Jones, but they're nowhere near up, higher up on the mountain than we are. They're gatekeepers. In fact, they're not even in the same mountain range. We're in not only another mountain range, but the highest mountains, the highest knowledge. So where you actually find this type of information, if you stop and think about it, it is channels like Connor's channel. It is Paul's channel. It is these smaller channels. It's not the megaphone of an Alex Jones, or you're not going to get it from a Tucker Carlson or all these different people. You're just going to get, they're basically gatekeepers. They can only go so far, but to get the type of information that we're talking about, this cutting edge, new revelations that we're finally starting to flesh out and figure out with this Rosetta Stone, this master key of this 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's where you're going to get it. So thanks, Paul and Connor, for having me. I'm honored. And listen, Paul or Connor, if maybe once a month or something like that, you want to give me a ring or whatever, then maybe, once every month or once every couple of months, give me a call and I'll jump back on and flesh out more, which, then maybe next time I'll get to that three main things about, the three main problems with Christianity, to do a little bit deeper in-depth dive on it.
Sure.
But if you could break down the 1,000-year reign of Christ, it does answer all three of those really important questions. But yeah,
you can never cover everything all at once. You can never cover it all in one video. I know, that's fine. Yeah, we'll keep the conversation going for sure, Hijack, and I appreciate you coming on again to share this. Like I said, we don't always agree on everything, and I think we do have different views on like the details. But overall, we're definitely on board with the idea that Christ is supreme and his kingdom is coming, and it's the final end time throes, the true end times, the real, the actual true definition of end times. I suppose we're actually genuinely in it in a sense. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Hijack, and we'll definitely do this again. Connor, do you have anything you want to say before we finalize this?
No, I just want to say it's an incredible journey. It's awesome to be here, man. Thank you again for having me. And of course, it's like any wild exploration through uncharted jungles, like we're going to get covered in bug bites, our shoes are going to be full of water, our backs are going to hurt, we're going to be sweaty, we're going to be tired, but it's the pursuit of truth and exploration that drives us, and we're all in it together. It's really an amazing thing. If you guys want to follow my channel, you can find me on YouTube at The Cult of Con, and if you're crazy enough that you want to financially support the channel, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/The Cult of Con, and we do have a free membership tier in the near future that's going to start kind of expanding and showing some more crazy stuff that I can't show on YouTube or say on YouTube. So if you guys are interested in that future stuff, definitely pop in over there and subscribe.
Excellent. Just my own final words. This topic is new. It's in its infancy. We don't have all the answers. We're trying our best here to have conversations, to openly discuss things which we're not really allowed to talk about or haven't been able to broach or discuss in a new context. So we've discussed some odd ideas today, haven't we? About resurrection, which people would equate to resurrection. But at the end of the day, the scripture is clear: the rest of the dead live not again till the 1,000 years has ended. We need to tackle those type of things, and that's all we're trying to do here. We're just trying to figure it out. I don't have everything, and no one channel is going to have all the answers for everything either. And what we're doing today as well, even me, when I made my own tentative video in October a year ago, everything I'm doing is built off of the works of better people than me who came before me on YouTube and other platforms. This is not my idea or Connor's idea or Hijacker's idea. This has been a collective work that's been slowly growing for about probably over 7 years, realistically, if not even longer. There have been voices around saying much of this for a long time. It's only in the past maybe 3 to 4 years has it really began to gain any form of traction. This is brand new. Okay, so we are trying to figure out everything as much as we can, and we are always learning new things every day. So there's not a finalized, fully formed thought, really. This is something that we all need to work together to work towards and try and figure out, because there are problems that we do need to address. And hopefully today we maybe theorized and figured out some things. Who knows? But the conversation has not ended today, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation. So thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for listening, and as always, God bless.
God bless.
Yeah, thanks so much. God bless, Paul.
This Saturnalia. Imagine a world where the truth was accessible and relatable. Where red baubles on a Nimrod phallus are forever changed. A solstice celebration where conspiracy and intrigue carry you away. Experience The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns, the perfect book for your weird way of life. Direct from Europe, this highly rated research has warmed the hearts of millions in time for the frosty season. Be inspired by timeless biblical questions such as, What the hell is Satan's problem? Ham did what to Noah? Was the pre-flood world really that bad? And if classic questions aren't your thing, and you prefer your Yuletide to be extra occult, take a trip to the unknown with the spine-chilling Hatman to the psychedelic realm of demonic jesters. You'll get 20 obscure and tantalizing chapters. No other book gives you the feeling of pure vindication towards your childhood fear of clowns. Each paragraph brings the wonder of Christ's sacrifice into your home. For this commercialized nonsense holiday, there's no greater gift for your family than a guide to effective spiritual warfare. Order now and get that edgelord of a teenage child of yours to Christ this winter. Sometimes in this little season, it takes clowns to get them there. To get your copy, do not call the number on screen, which is being used as a placeholder reminder of a bygone time. And don't send a check to any PO box because this is not the 90s anymore. Simply type in "The Nephilim Look Like Clowns" on Amazon to get your copy just in time to lock yourself away from the world and wait out the pagan festivities.